Hey, it's Ray. And this next letter might make your heart race. It's the kind you read twice, just to believe it really happened. You know how some secrets have a timer ticking? Well, this one exploded, on his birthday. If you love stories that unravel one quiet clue at a time, hit that subscribe button now. You're not going to want to miss how this one plays out. On this episode of Letters to Ray, I'm reading a letter from a woman who started noticing strange bedtime stories coming from her daughter. It begins with just one line. I thought my husband was working late. I used to love the sound of my daughter's voice when she talked about her day. The way she told stories, with exaggerated facial expressions and tiny hands flying everywhere. It always made dinner feel like a little theater performance. But that night, her innocent chatter felt like someone cracked the window and let in a cold wind. She was sitting in her booster seat, fork in one hand, when she said it. Daddy says I'm his little helper when we visit Aunt Melissa. I laughed. Then froze. I don't have a sister. I've never met anyone named Melissa. I gently placed my wine glass down and asked, Sweetie, who's Aunt Melissa? Her answer. Daddy says she lives close to Grandma's. My heart stalled. Grandma's house was across town, almost an hour away. My husband, Jonah, had started picking up our daughter from daycare on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my late shift days. It was his daddy-daughter bonding time. Apparently, part of that bonding involved a mystery woman. I smiled at our daughter, nodded like everything was fine, and excused myself to the kitchen. I stood there for minutes, letting the faucet run. I needed air. Jonah and I had been married for 7 years. The first 5 felt like something out of a storybook. Long walks, weekend pancakes, shared jokes only we understood. Then came the late nights. The vague work dinners. The locked phone. Still, I brushed it off. We had a mortgage, a 5-year-old, and holiday plans. But that night, standing in the kitchen with wet hands and a stomach full of knots, I realized I had been decorating a house that was already on fire. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye as he left for an early meeting. That weekend, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened his laptop. It wasn't even locked. The man who once updated passwords every other week had become careless, or confident. In the browser history, I found directions to an address I didn't recognize. Then, I found messages. Nothing blatant. No naked pictures. Just small things. Venmo payments to a Mel B. Notes like, love today, and same time next week. He was stupid but not too stupid. My hands shook as I printed the directions. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I knew I had to see it myself. I waited until Thursday. He picked up our daughter right after school and said he'd take her to the park. I got in my car and followed. Every turn he made, I kept back. My palms were sweating on the wheel. I almost backed out twice. Then he turned down a residential road I didn't recognize. Neat lawns. Perfect mailboxes. A lavender wreath on the front door of the 4th house. He parked, unbuckled our daughter, walked up to the door, and rang the bell. The woman who opened it wore lingerie under a silk robe. At 4:30 in the afternoon, she bent down, kissed his cheek, then our daughter's, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My daughter went running inside. Jonah stayed on the porch, checking his phone. That was my moment. I reversed, turned the corner, and parked 2 blocks down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in silence for 20 minutes, staring at my own hands. When I finally drove home, I was calm. I made dinner, bathed our daughter, smiled when Jonah came home, and told him his mother had called. I even kissed him goodnight. That weekend was his birthday. He wanted to celebrate with close friends and family. Just something simple, he said, something warm. I agreed. I even offered to plan it. He had no idea. That week, I printed the texts. I dug up the emails. I messaged Melissa. I told her I was the babysitter and asked if she'd come surprise Jonah. She said yes. Of course she said yes. I hired a friend from work to film the night. I gave him exact cues. Jonah thought we were making a birthday tribute. He wasn't wrong. Just not the kind he expected. Saturday came. Everyone was there. Cake, drinks, music, the works. Jonah smiled like he owned the room. He gave a toast. To love, to growth, and to the people who stick by you. I almost laughed. That's when I gave my own toast. Short and sweet. Then I handed him a box. Inside, a flash drive, printed screenshots, and a note. Play me. Before he could open his mouth, the video began. Clips. Messages. GPS pings. Then Melissa walked in, holding a bouquet, grinning like it was a proposal. She saw the footage halfway through. Her face fell. People gasped. One guy spilled his drink. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Jonah stood frozen. Then came the sound of the door opening and closing. I had already packed his things. That night, he didn't come home. I tucked our daughter in like usual, kissed her forehead, sat on the couch with a glass of wine, checked the baby monitor, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I wasn't angry. I wasn't proud. I just was. In the morning, I'd wake up and make pancakes. She liked them shaped like stars. He called the next day. I didn't pick up. He emailed. I didn't reply. He showed up once. I left the envelope on the porch. Visitation schedule, legal notice, nothing else. No message. No rage. No second chances. Just a line in the sand. He never crossed it. And I never moved it. Some things break too quietly to notice. Others end in a room full of people clapping. This one ended somewhere in between. But it ended all the same. That was enough. The funny thing about betrayal is how it doesn't scream, it whispers. It curls around your routine, wrapping itself into every little thing. I found it in our spice drawer. He loved smoked paprika. I hated it, but I kept buying it. I saw it in the ring dish by the sink, where I used to place his wedding band when he did the dishes. It had sat there untouched since the party. What haunted me most wasn't the affair. It was how easy he made it look. Like deception was just another chore. Like he could just wear two faces. I started noticing the cracks that had always been there. The way he avoided eye contact when I talked about long-term plans. The way he left the room when I played our wedding video. How he suddenly stopped calling me babe and started calling me hey. None of it felt like love. It felt like someone waiting for the lights to go off so they could sneak out the back. And yet, I still wondered if it was something I did. Was I too quiet? Too tired? Too predictable? Grief doesn't just question the past, it interrogates your worth. I found Melissa's Instagram. Private, of course. But her profile picture was cropped just enough to show a tattoo I remembered from that day at her doorstep. A vine curling up her wrist. It wasn't rage that bubbled up, not even jealousy. It was something more pathetic. Curiosity. Who was she? Did she know about me all along? Did she hold my daughter in her arms and wonder about the woman who packed her lunches? Did she ever feel bad? Or was she just happy to have someone who belonged to someone else? My lawyer was sharp, cold, and efficient. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked for timelines. Evidence. Bank records. We filed for separation with conditions. Supervised visits. No contact outside scheduled times. I didn't want him near my daughter unless he proved he was stable. He didn't fight it. That told me more than any text message could. If guilt was fuel, he was already running on fumes. He moved into a short-term rental 2 towns over. Melissa vanished. No more Venmo, no more messages. I imagine she disappeared the second the party lights turned off. People began picking sides, as they do. Some said I should have handled it privately. Others applauded the spectacle. Iconic, one cousin called it. I didn't care either way. I hadn't done it for applause. I did it for proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That what I'd suspected was real. That I could stand in a room full of friends and let the truth speak louder than any denial ever could. I didn't need a breakdown. I needed a breakthrough. And it came exactly when I stopped explaining myself to people who'd never lived in my silence. Our daughter adjusted faster than I did. Kids are like rivers. They change direction but still flow. She asked about Daddy sometimes. I kept it simple. Daddy's living somewhere else, but he still loves you. I left it at that. Because she didn't need the truth yet. She needed safety. She needed a mother who didn't flinch at shadows. I started therapy. At first, all I did was cry. Then I started laughing. Then I started talking. And then one day, I stopped using the word failure to describe myself. I stopped saying, again. I started saying, next. One afternoon, while packing away old photo albums, I found our wedding invitation. Cream cardstock. Embossed lettering. His full name beside mine. A date that now meant something entirely different. I thought about burning it. But instead, I put it in a box labeled Evidence of Dreams. Not to punish myself, but to remember that I had believed. That belief wasn't the mistake. He was. The courage to hope isn't naive. It's human. And if I couldn't forgive him, maybe I could at least stop punishing myself for trusting someone who didn't deserve to be trusted. Then came the text, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for hours. It wasn't the first message, but it was the first that felt unfinished. Like a trapdoor waiting to be opened. I didn't reply. But it gnawed at me. What would he say? That he was sorry? That he missed us? That Melissa was a mistake and I was the son? I'd already written those words in my head 100 times, and none of them sounded like the truth. He didn't want us back. He wanted forgiveness without change. And I wasn't in the business of shortcuts. The last time I saw him, it was at our daughter's school recital. He sat 2 rows behind me. Alone. Wore a jacket he hadn't ironed. Clapped a second too late. We locked eyes once. He smiled. I didn't. After the show, I kissed my daughter's cheek, told her I was proud. He approached. Said she did great. I nodded. She hugged him. I watched. Then I turned and walked away. That's all there was. No drama. No speech. Just space. The kind you give someone when you finally stopped building bridges to a burned city. And that's where things stood. Quiet, separate, and clean. I didn't post about it. I didn't throw another party. But in my own way I started over. I painted the hallway. Bought a new robe. Got bangs. The little things that say, I'm still here. That life can crack but still hold water. That love can end, and you can still love yourself. The truth had been ugly, but necessary. And for the first time in years, I no longer feared bedtime stories. Because this one was mine to finish. They say healing is never linear, and I learned that sitting alone in my car on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I just dropped our daughter off at her music class and parked outside the same grocery store where he once surprised me with flowers. It's strange how memories sneak up, not in the grand gestures, but in the cracks between them. The smell of his cologne from a stranger's coat. A song that played once during a road trip. I used to think grief was reserved for death. But the death of a future? That hits in silence. My daughter had started drawing us differently. She used to draw stick figures. One big happy family. Now she drew 2 houses, 2 beds, 2 dinner tables. But she smiled more. She danced around more. It was like something lifted in the absence of his tension. I never realized how much she absorbed until it was gone. One night she said, "Mommy, I like it when the house is quiet." It made me want to cry and scream at the same time. Not because she was wrong, but because I had let her live in noise for so long. My ex tried to reinsert himself gradually. Emails about scheduling pickups turned into comments about my hair. You look different. Hope you're doing okay. I kept it strictly about logistics. He didn't like that. He pushed. Asked to talk. I agreed once, out of curiosity. We met at a neutral cafe. He apologized. I believed it, but not enough. He said Melissa had moved out. I nodded. He said he missed his family. I nodded again. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. That was the last time we sat face to face. Some things break too quietly to ever be rebuilt. People kept asking if I'd date again. As if romance was a bandage. As if my worth existed in relation to someone else's desire. I went on one date. He was kind. Funny. Wore socks that didn't match. But when he smiled, all I saw was my ex's smirk. It wasn't fair, but it was honest. So I excused myself early. Took the long way home. Stopped for ice cream and cried into the steering wheel. Healing isn't dinner dates and rebound kisses. It's remembering how to laugh at your own jokes and eat alone without feeling watched. A neighbor invited me to a paint and sip night. I almost said no. But I went. And for 2 hours, I didn't think about what had been taken from me. I thought about colors. About wine. About how badly I still draw cats. I met a woman who had been through worse and still smiled. She told me, when you're done grieving, you get to start dreaming. I didn't believe her then. But later that night, I pulled out an old notebook. The one I used to write poetry in. And I wrote a line. I survived without applause. I started collecting moments that belonged only to me. A morning where I woke up before the alarm. A playlist I curated just for me. A Sunday walk where the wind hit my face just right. I started planting herbs on the balcony. Sage. Rosemary. Basil. My daughter and I named them after cartoon characters. They thrived. I took it as a sign. Life could grow even in small places. Even in broken soil. I didn't need a big rebirth. I needed consistent light, even if it came through cracked windows. The world didn't owe me restoration. But I owed it to myself. One evening my daughter asked, "Why don't you smile at Daddy anymore?" I took a deep breath. Told her, because grown-ups sometimes hurt each other in ways that make smiling hard. She nodded, like she understood. Then she said, "But you still smile at me." I hugged her tightly. Children ask the hardest questions without realizing the weight they carry. But in her words, I found the most precious answer. I didn't need to fix the past. I just needed to be better than it. For her. For me. For the woman I had almost forgotten I could become. Hat week, he sent another email. This time he wrote, "I know I broke something I can't fix. I just want to be a good father now." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I believed him. And it didn't change anything. He could be a father without being near me. He could grow, change, evolve, but I didn't owe him a front row seat to my peace. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step aside. Let people rebuild their lives without yours as their scaffolding. I wasn't a lesson. I wasn't a stepping stone. I was done. There was no dramatic turning point. No montage of rising from the ashes. Just me, folding laundry and listening to an audiobook. Me, standing in line for coffee and noticing a man smile at me and not immediately flinching. Me, in bed, reading poetry again. Me, hearing my daughter laugh from another room and smiling because I wasn't afraid of silence anymore. I didn't need a happily ever after. I just needed a happily right now. And every day I made it through without compromising myself felt like a small miracle no one had to witness but me. So when people ask how I got through it, I tell them this. There is no map. There is no revenge arc. Sometimes the win is quiet. Sometimes it's simply reclaiming space. your room, your schedule, your mind. It's choosing not to carry what he left behind. It's realizing that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes it simply says, "This time, I choose me." It started with a ringtone. One I didn't recognize. He'd come to drop off our daughter, standing stiff on the porch, acting like a decent dad. But when his phone buzzed and he fumbled to silence it, I saw something flicker. A name on the screen. Ray's realtor. My breath caught. Ray. He'd called her that once, in passing. I hadn't known it meant anything. But that name showing up again, tied to a real estate agent? My stomach flipped. He was buying a house. And not for us. Something was off, and this time, I wasn't going to ignore it. I waited until he left and pulled the receipts from the drawer. Literally. Our daughter had been coloring on the back of a folded paper he must have left behind. I turned it over and froze. It was a home inspection document. Address, agent name, signature. His signature. And listed under co-applicant. Melissa. My sister. Melissa, who said they hadn't spoken since I kicked him out. Melissa, who still brought over lasagna like nothing had happened. My hands shook. The silence that had comforted me just yesterday now felt suffocating. And for the first time in weeks, I screamed. I wanted to break something. Instead, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I didn't care if we were in the middle of mediation. I wanted everything paused. Re-evaluated. Because if he was lying about this, what else was he hiding? And Melissa. God. My own sister. What was I supposed to do with that? I called her next. She answered like everything was normal. Hey babe. Like she hadn't just signed for a house with my ex-husband. Hey, I said, keeping my voice even. What do you know about 218 Hawthorne Drive? Her silence was an answer. Who told you? She finally whispered. That broke me. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I laughed. Because of course. Of course it was true. Of course she didn't even bother denying it. The house. The secret relationship. Everything. She started sputtering, trying to explain, but all I heard was betrayal. Familiar. Family. Final. Save it, I said. You two deserve each other. I hung up before she could say more. Then I sat on the floor, our daughter playing in the next room, blissfully unaware. I clutched the receipt in one hand and my chest in the other. The next day, I went to see the house. I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted to feel the hurt. Maybe I needed to see it before it was filled with furniture and memories I'd never be part of. The place was beautiful. White brick, wide porch, manicured lawn. Melissa always said she wanted a swing on her porch. I guess now she'd get it. I walked past a moving truck in the driveway. He saw me before I saw him. His face changed. What are you doing here? He asked, like I was the one trespassing. Following the lies, I said. He didn't deny it. Said it wasn't planned. That he and Melissa just happened. Said they were thinking of keeping it quiet until the divorce was final, out of respect. I stared at him like I didn't recognize his face. And maybe I didn't. He looked smug. Self-righteous. Like the victim. I told him to save his breath. That he could build whatever life he wanted. But he wouldn't rewrite mine. He laughed and said, "You'll calm down eventually." That was the moment. The match. The sentence that lit something deep in me I didn't even know was there. That night, I drafted a message to Melissa and deleted it. Drafted again. Deleted again. I didn't want her apology. I didn't want the full story. I just wanted her gone. So instead of a message, I sent her a copy of the inspection receipt, the email forward from the realtor, and a picture of her signature. No words. Just evidence. Let her sit with it. Let her squirm. I blocked her after that. I wasn't interested in drama. But I was done playing the calm one. She made her choices. He made his. Now they could live with them. By the end of the week, my lawyer had filed a motion to expedite. I didn't want alimony anymore. I wanted every dollar in custody support and a protection clause for our daughter. I didn't trust them. Not with bedtime. Not with birthdays. Not with influence. I had to be the wall. The boundary. The truth teller. Because if they were willing to lie about this, what would they teach her to hide? I wanted primary custody. I wanted power back. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. Out of love. And maybe a little bit out of spine. Finally. I didn't tell my daughter much. Just that sometimes grown-ups break promises. That it had nothing to do with her. That I loved her, all of her, always. She asked if Daddy was going to live with Auntie Mel now. I didn't lie. I just nodded and said, yes. But we're going to be okay. She looked at me and asked, are they going to be okay? That made me pause. Kids are sharp. Gentle, but sharp. I said I didn't know. That people who hurt others usually have more hurting to do inside. She nodded. Then asked for pancakes. I stayed up that night, looking at old family photos. One from a beach trip, all of us smiling in fake harmony. I couldn't believe how long I'd kept the illusion going. Pretending we were happy. Pretending I was fine. But the truth? I'm glad it cracked. Because when something shatters, you don't have to tiptoe anymore. You step over it. You move forward. Even if your feet get cut in the process. You learn. You bleed. You keep walking. And someday soon, the pieces don't hurt anymore. They shine. The hearing was short. He didn't show up, but his lawyer did, smug and ill-prepared. Mine came armed with documents, emails, location logs, receipts. Custody shifted. Financial agreements were updated. And in that sterile courtroom, something subtle but seismic happened. I stopped being someone's wife or someone's sister. I became a wall. A protector. Not in a dramatic sense. No grand speeches. No victory music. Just paperwork, quiet nods, and a signature that separated my life from his. For the first time in months, I walked out of a building and didn't look back. I didn't even flinch when the doors closed. The house was quiet that night. Just me and our daughter curled up in a blanket nest on the living room floor. We watched a Disney movie I didn't follow, made popcorn that burned on the first try, and laughed at nothing. She fell asleep with one sock half off and a sticker on her cheek. I didn't move her. Just stayed there beside her, wide awake, feeling the absence of panic. I realized that silence could be safety too. It didn't have to be lonely. It could be a held breath after a storm. A pause before rebuilding. 2 days later, I dropped our daughter at school, then drove to Melissa's house. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. She was standing on the porch already, probably expecting me. She looked thinner. Her hair was longer. I didn't recognize the shirt she wore. Maybe his. I handed her an envelope. She looked surprised. "What's this?" she asked. I said, "The last thing you'll ever get from me." She didn't open it right away. Maybe she never would. It was a drawing. One our daughter made. The three of us, hand in hand. Melissa in the middle. Labeled, before. I didn't need an apology. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted closure without conversation. That envelope wasn't a threat, or a peace offering. It was just a goodbye. She blinked a few times like she wanted to speak, but I turned and walked away. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't bitter. I was emptied out. Cleared. And I wanted to stay that way. She could have her choices. He could have his consequences. I had our daughter, a drawer full of legal clarity, and mornings that no longer made me nauseous. That felt like more than enough. Life didn't turn magical overnight. Co-parenting was still hard. Scheduling took effort. Our daughter had questions I didn't always have answers for. But I gave her honesty, filtered through love. And I gave myself forgiveness, not for staying too long, but for hoping too hard. Hope isn't a flaw. It's just a mirror you sometimes mistake for a window. You think there's a view on the other side, but really, you're only looking at yourself, waiting to be seen. Eventually, I stopped hoping he'd become better. I started hoping I'd become free. And over time, that hope became a truth. 6 months later, I bought a couch. Not a big thing, maybe, but it mattered. It was the first major purchase that had nothing to do with him. I picked a deep green velvet one, even though the kid-friendly guide said to avoid fabric. I didn't care. I liked how it looked. I liked how it felt. And every time I sat on it, I reminded myself, this was mine. This space, this quiet, this comfort. I didn't owe it to anyone. No man bought it. No sister helped pick it. It came from me. And that was everything. One morning, my daughter asked if she could invite Daddy and Auntie Mel to her school play. I paused. I wanted to say no. But instead, I asked her, "Do you want them there?" She nodded. I said okay. Not for them. For her. And when the play came, we sat on opposite ends of the auditorium. I clapped when she sang. Smiled when she curtsied. And when she ran off the stage, she came straight to me first. That mattered. That anchored me. That reminded me that I hadn't lost. I'd rearranged. And sometimes, that's the same thing. Months passed. Then a year. Birthdays, holidays, drop-offs, pick-up lines. The big emotions softened, dulled by time and daily life. Melissa sent gifts occasionally. I never acknowledged them. He sent long emails about parenting agreements. I read them, responded, and deleted them. It all became mechanical. And mechanical was good. It meant we weren't bleeding anymore. We were stitched up, walking away in opposite directions. It didn't feel triumphant. Just necessary. Like taking off shoes that never quite fit. I didn't feel like I'd won. But I wasn't waiting for justice either. I just lived. And that was enough. Then one night, I found a card tucked into my daughter's backpack. It was from Melissa. A note scribbled quickly. "She looks so much like you. You're doing an amazing job. I'm sorry." No return address. No name. But I knew the handwriting. I held the card for a moment before tearing it in half. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. Just because I didn't want her words. I didn't want her narrative. She could feel guilty. She could heal or not heal. That was her story. I had mine. And I was finally the one writing it. By spring, the green couch had worn in corners and a juice stain that wouldn't come out. Our daughter drew smiley faces on the walls when she was bored. I let her. Sometimes, love is messy. Sometimes, healing is loud. I didn't scrub the walls or fix the stain. I left them. They were proof. That we were still here. That we'd made it. That even if everything else cracked, this life, this peace, stayed standing.